diving into you, knowing who you are, knowing how fabulous and beautiful and powerful and magnificent that you are, empowers others to do the same, to show up in the same way, to express themselves in the same way. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Power of Expression podcast, here to help you show up with the fullest expression of you, whatever that looks like, feels like, how you show up, right? So I am recording this on a Sunday morning. And so much of this, as I'm launching and doing this podcast and showing up in a new way and using my voice in a new way, there's so much newness in every step of the way that what's happening for me is that I'm really figuring things out. I'm figuring out my rhythm. I'm figuring out a process that works good for me. I'm figuring out a system that works for me. I'm figuring out systems and processes with my producer who produces this podcast and these episodes, and we're figuring things out as we go along. I'm figuring out my message. I mean, I absolutely have, I do feel like a very strong foundation and clarity to my messaging, hence the name, The Power of Expression. I do feel very clear in that. However, just all the other little things, what that looks like, I'm still figuring out. And just my cadence of it all. So like I said, so last week was just busy with work and figuring things out. And then the graduation that I went to yesterday. And so this morning I'm recording this episode, and something as simple as pulling out my notebook and just jotting down thoughts, ideas, and kind of even the flow of how I want the podcast to go, how I want this conversation and this episode to go. Like even something like as simple as that we may take for granted, but that's a process. Like me, putting on my headphones, making sure the microphone works and the video works and the quality and everything is good. And there's not like background noises, and having my notebook, because I like to take notes. I like that pen to paper. That's a process, that's like figuring things out. I think once we're in it, it's going to become second nature and I'm not going to have to think about it. But I'm saying all of this because I want you to think about you and what you're going through and what it is that maybe you're doing or thinking about or creating. Maybe it's a project. Maybe it's something you want to do in your home. Maybe it's, a conversation, whatever that looks like for you. Like put yourself in my story, put yourself in anyone's story. There's always something to take from it. But understanding that processes and systems don't just automatically happen, that we have to take all the baby steps and acknowledge the baby steps in order to find the system that works best for us. So today's main message is around giving and receiving, the value in that beautiful cycle, and that everything is a skill set. I will hear other thought leaders talk about, or I should say, thought leaders, life coaches, mindset coaches, anything in that coaching mentor world, right? And they will talk about strategy. This is very, we're going to have a lot of strategies. We're going to have a lot of how-tos. We're going to have a lot of tactical skills, and absolutely. So of course, goes without saying, right? So much value in knowing how to do something. However, I would challenge you and challenge that person to say, what if everything is a skill set? Learning how to show up in the best version of you is a skill set. Doing the deep dive work within you and getting really clear about who you are, and even clear, like I even believe that you can be confused or questioning who you are and not really clear about who you are, but understanding there's even clarity in that. What if all of that is actually a skill set, that there actually is strategy behind you and you loving yourself the most, you having self-care, you diving into your personal skill set? What if that is a strategy? Because what happens is that then you show up and express yourself in a bigger way to others, which then means and allows that you can give in a bigger way. There's something that a thought that I had a few months ago. It was a download, basically. And that is, you can sincerely love someone else. You can give them lots of love. However, if you don't love yourself first, you cannot empower others or teach others how to empower themselves and self-love themselves, right? So we all know we have friends and we have family in our life who deeply, deeply care for us and deeply, deeply love us. While I don't have any children, absolutely mothers and fathers love their children with their entire being. There's no doubt in that at all. However, if you as a mother, you as a father, you as a friend, sibling, whatever title you want to put behind your name, if you don't truly love yourself first, you actually cannot empower someone else on how to love themselves. You cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot give what you do not have. So self-love, self-care, self-acceptance is not selfish. I want that to be, I don't want that sentence to ever exist, that people, self-love, self-care. It is absolutely an act of self-love and empowering. That just doing the work. So again, doing the work, we put so much stake in the hustle, the grind, the masculine hardcore energy of the strategy and the tactical skills. But what if there was just as much hustle and grind and love and acceptance around empowering yourself first? What if there was strategy in that, and it wasn't this foo-foo, woo-woo, kumbaya sort of feeling or label? I really, really, it really bothers me when people say, they'll start a sentence by saying, I'm not really a woo-woo person, or I don't really, this whole like kumbaya or touchy-feely stuff, I don't really agree with it. But so they start their sentence with, it's not woo-woo, but then they'll go into tapping into your heart and that sort of thing. My challenge is that, what if none of it was the woo-woo, the air quotes, any of that? It was actually all strategy, and it was all an act of self-love, self-care, and self-acceptance, because you cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot give what you do not have. So diving into you, knowing who you are, knowing how fabulous and beautiful and powerful and magnificent that you are, empowers others to do the same, to show up in the same way, to express themselves in the same way. I was listening to a video, Simon Sinek, if I'm saying his last name correctly, Simon. And he talked about how he had a girlfriend and he would ask her, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And her answer to every question was great, great, great. Come to find out that she wasn't great. She was actually sad. She was depressed. She was feeling all of these normal human emotions. And Simon goes on to say how truly selfish it was of her to not be able to be honest and vulnerable with what she was really feeling, because it did not allow him to show up in a way where he could love and support her and give that value. So that goes back to the giving and the receiving cycle, right? It's so easy for us to give, but are we able to have the same energy in receiving? And so I just loved what Simon says. It is actually a very selfish act if you do not allow and receive other people's love, other people's support. You are cutting off their ability to be able to serve and love in a big way. And so it is the looking within and asking, like, for me, it's more about asking the question, why are you cutting off that receiving, right? And so the most loving thing you can do is love yourself first, learn self-care, learn self-acceptance, because you are just going to be able to give and allow and receive so much more. And another question to ask, and this, I don't want to say this could be triggering, but it certainly could, I don't know what the word is. I'll just ask the question. Asking the question of yourself, are you an inspiration or are you a burden? And if I'm circling back again, the power of expression, the power of self-love, self-care, self-acceptance. You're going to hear me this over and over again, understanding the strategy behind it, because if you want to inspire others, if you want other people to shine their light, and look, and we could talk about corporate America, we could talk about any sort of job title that's out there. If you are whether you're a leader, a manager, a boss, a director, and you have a team, and even if you do not have a team, it is about how you're leading yourself, right? But to be able to be an inspiration for other people where they feel motivated. So inspiration comes from other people. Motivation comes within. I cannot motivate you. I can maybe hopefully inspire you by something I'm doing, by the way that I'm showing up, by the way that I'm expressing myself, by following along my journey and realizing I first of all, I don't know all the answers, and I'm clearly figuring it out as I go along. I think sometimes that's painfully obvious that I'm figuring it out as I go along. But understanding that it is the journey of the self-discovery. That is how you will be able to inspire others and not be a burden. If you are not caring for yourself, if you aren't already, you could potentially be in the future a burden. And I say that with love. I really, really don't say that with judgment, because we're we're only showing up the best we know how. And we are only giving to the best of our ability. So if you want to give more, if you want to help more, serve more, love more, show up in a bigger way, it first starts with you. That's it. So, and then one other point. So Gary Vee, he did a video that I just listened to. Actually, I think it was just this morning. And he talks about depth versus width. And he gave a Taylor Swift analogy, and how Taylor will, she'll go, you know, she'll be on Twitter, she'll be on any of her social media accounts, and she'll respond to DMs, and there'll be, you know, some young girl who's asking her to, you know, sing at her prom, sing at her high school prom. And while there's not an ROI in terms of the financial piece of that, the ROI is actually the depth of how she shows up. So anyway, so Gary Vee gives that analogy, and I'm going to take it kind of another layer of that, but depth versus width. How deep are you? How deep can you go within? Because I promise, there's a couple things I know for sure. And one of them, the deeper you go within you, the greater the treasure. And the treasure is actually you. Because in that you are learning the depth of who you are. And then you are able to show up and express yourself, lead yourself, which then in turn allows other to lead themselves, to show up in a bigger way, to express themselves in a bigger way. So if it all starts with us, it just becomes this beautiful cycle, this infinite, like that infinite 8, right, of giving and receiving, and this beautiful growing of going within, going deep within, and then the deeper we go, the higher we can grow, right? Fun little words there that rhyme, right? So, yeah, it's just all, it really, really is all a process, and falling in love with the entire process, falling in love with you, falling in love with your journey of self-love, falling in love with the journey of self-care, and falling in love with the journey of self-acceptance. Loving yourself, all parts of you. Yeah, beautiful parts, that's easy to love, but can you give yourself the parts of you that maybe you would label as not pretty or challenging, or whatever adjective you want to put in there? Can you still love that part of you? So thank you so much. I hope you found some value in this conversation, and thank you. I will have to say thank you for just being on this journey and understanding. Clearly, we're all learning. We're learning as we go, and there's so much power in the journey. So until next time, power of expression. How you show up matters to you and to everyone else. Lots of love.